Jessica Jones is a character that by now most people are familiar with due to a pretty successful run on Netflix in her own series and as a part of the much less popular Defenders series. But what some people haven't necessarily read is where she comes from. The Alias comic by Bendis and Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Gaydos, where she debuted, is frankly one of the most important comics to come from Marvel in the 2000s. And we're going to talk about why that is, how that book changed the game for Marvel in the 2000s, and why I think it stands the test of time as one of Bendis' best works. To talk about that, we've got Cale,
What's up, hot dogs?
Tyler,
Hi, guys.
Marco will be here soon. I'm Sean. Thank you for joining us. Whether you are live with us or in the future, make sure you smash that
Smash.
like button to let YouTube know that you enjoy what we do around here. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's Bendis month. It's Brian Michael Bendis month here on the channel, and we're ending it with Alias, the book that you guys voted to represent Bendis's work here for the book club. Are you both happy that Alias ended up winning?
I mean, it's irrelevant now, but actually, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, now or
Yeah, it's
no.
it was surprising. It was the one that was kind of like the dark horse pick. I felt like out of the picks. I was expecting an
done by Marvel.
Avengers. Oh, my bad, my bad. Forgot. I didn't realize the publisher. I was expecting like an Avengers or an Ultimate Spider-Man. Like I in my like if when we devised this as a month, I think all of us said, "Well, I wouldn't mind reading Ultimate Spider-Man again."
I
'Cause
really
we
thought it was going to be
assumed, yeah.
Avengers.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I was hoping for Alias, because I'd never read it, but I really thought it was going to be Avengers.
Yeah, this was definitely a dark horse pick. I think it makes a lot of sense that that's how this book would win, because in a lot of ways it's a dark horse book to exist. You look at, when it was made, 2001. It was published from 2001 to 2003. And at the time, there just wasn't anything like this coming out from Marvel. Um, really unique in that regard.
Not anything like this at the time. And as I'm reading this, I was like, well, this is never going to happen again.
I would argue it's still happening.
At Marvel?
I would say at the other one.
Fair, fair. Yeah, in my eyes, it was like, oh, this never happens at Marvel again, specifically.
I think things happen in cycles.
This was published under the Max Comics line, right? Which
Yeah.
I think they reserve at this point. They only reserve those for their war books. I think like Nick Fury Max and Punisher Max were the last ones that I remember happening under this branding.
Oh, that sounds right.
Which were the adult content was more horrors of war and violence than some of the more adult themes that are in this series. So that's where I don't see them letting some of their biggest characters say the F word.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know how you guys read it, but I got 2 volumes on Comixology, and they had an afterword from Bendis, and they were like, no way would Marvel let me touch Spider-Man or Wolverine.
These were afterwards that were written at the onset of this as it's coming out, or are they more recent afterwards? Did it have a date on that?
I believe it was at the end of
Got it.
issue 28 at the time.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mine had that too. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, it makes sense to me that Marvel wouldn't necessarily let him play with those two, although Peter does factor in, and we'll talk about his appearance, but that was really cool.
And even still, he has a bit of a squeaky clean image that doesn't fit in to the rest of everything else going on.
He like scolds Jessica for cursing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was real funny.
Before we get started, I do want to say thank you to Hayden's Hideout. who is a Comics Pals VI Pal member for 1 month. He says, I didn't get a chance to read this, so I won't be contributing much to the conversation. I'll be lurking while playing Morrowind. Have a good convo. Thank you, Aiden.
Morrowind. Interesting choice. Okay.
Hope you learned something.
Enjoy that, dude. So yeah, Alias was done again between September of 2001 and November of 2003. We read all 28 issues for this conversation. It was created by Bendis, Brian Michael Bendis, with Michael Gaydos on art. Letters, we had Richard Starkings, Oscar Gongora, Wes Abbott, Corey Pettit. All the colors done by the brilliant Matt Hollingsworth, who's been killing it for decades. My goodness. Um, and I want to start, at the origin, at the basics of this whole thing. In 2001, Brian Michael Bendis is a young upstart in comics. He has done Torso. He's done some indie stuff here and there, but he definitely hasn't broken out, so to speak, as a household name. You've got Ultimate Spider-Man, and you've got this really, and Daredevil. Um, and he talks about how he spent the 90s kind of in a weird spot in his life. He talked about how he spent the 90s doing gig work because people might not know this. Bendis started as an artist. He started as an artist writer. And so he said this. Um, I spent most of the 90s drawing characters at bat mitzvahs and weddings. It was a great gig because it would be good money for the gig. And if I got two in a weekend, that meant I could stay home for that week and write and draw Jinx. And he says Ultimate Spider-Man was a six-issue miniseries when I got it. We literally had to convince them to keep going. And he gave that quote in the context of, not having any secure finances during that time in his life. And so getting in with Marvel and getting to do Ultimate Spider-Man as a long-running series and then this really changed his life trajectory because he was tired of doing the bat mitzvahs.
And even then, that was just from when I did some quick looking up of Bendis earlier today. Him getting Ultimate Spider-Man was kind of a fluke too, because Quesada started working with David Mack, I believe, and Quesada at the time was pitching Marvel Knights books, and he had Bendis pitch one that didn't really work out, and then instead he was like, all right, you can do this Ultimate Spider-Man thing, because they were friends with David Mack together, which even like it's just very serendipitous. His kind of in Marvel.
Yeah, perfect timing for his sensibilities. One thing I've always known about Bendis, just from interviews and stuff, is the way he trained himself to write dialogue. And he would spend a lot of time like in coffee shops or on the train or wherever, just listening to people talk and getting an understanding of the kind of like pacing of a conversation, the way people might interrupt each other, the way they don't always say what they really mean, or very rarely even do they say what they really mean. These are things that have been rattling around in my brain from Bendis interviews for 20 years. And that kind of sets the stage for the dialogue of this book. And I think that's the most, especially if you've never read it before, if you've never read Bendis speak before, or if you're only used to Bendis speak from like 2012-ish on, this is like peak Bendis speak. And it includes all of those ideas that I just talked about. You can see how he frames his dialogue off of real people.
In Bendis speak, in my eyes, whenever I read Bendis speak, it felt very cinematic to me. In movies, the dialogue is back and forth like that. It is very one person says something, one person says another thing. What you just said, Sean, about going into cafes and listening to people, that's literally what I was taught in college by my screenwriting professors. So having that in comics is very interesting. And a lot of this book is that. It's paced in a way that is, even reading it in 2025, different and interesting.
I don't know about that. Different, maybe. You're right in that back and forth. It always feels quick, like it does a really interesting job of really guiding you through the page and then just sweeping you into the next thing. And I think that really benefits Gatos in the Michael Gatos in the art, in that a lot of what he's doing here is just drawing, talking heads. And often, for better or for worse, we'll get there. It's the same image over and over again.
Yeah, I think like the biggest difference in terms of what I expect from comics dialogue versus what I get from Bendis is you often see characters like really go on long soliloquies, and there's not as much of the quick back and forth that you get. And we'll mock it. We'll say like, "Oh, I was in the bathroom." You were in the bathroom? What were you doing in the bathroom? Well, I was doing what people do in the bathroom. Yeah, but what's that? There's one thing or the
Right.
other. Like that kind of thing. And we'll make fun of it. But I think when Bendis is at his peak, which is here, um, a lot is revealed in that. There's a lot of character revealed in that. There's a lot of personality revealed in that. And it gets to a point later where everyone is doing it, it doesn't work. But I think here, like even Luke Cage, he'll do it, but it's in a Luke Cage way. It's not Bendis speaking through Luke, it's Luke speaking in a Bendis fashion. Whereas I think it
Hmm.
becomes the opposite later in Bendis's career.
And it's more natural, I feel. It's when people talk, they're often interrupting people. I mean, hi. But like it's kind of how people talk. They talk in sentences, and then someone says the next sentence, somebody says another sentence. Not as much a character gets to talk for a page in real life, and then the next character talks for the next page. So it's a way of mimicking a more natural speak that people have adopted since, really.
Well, I think they've improved on it,
Agreed.
maybe.
Yeah, and I think Bendis has as
Um,
well.
yeah, because what I really found grating here was the repetition, and it really got me a bit later on when Jessica goes to the small town, and she meets the girl's mother or whatever, and she said she was oh, you're here. I was making cookies. I was gonna make you cookies. And I just went, fucking come on. And I just like yes, like people repeat themselves. And even in the example Sean just gave of like Bendis speak, there is, repetition in that. But the way there are certain ways that Bendis does it that there's so much repetition that really uh it can really rip you out of the intricate dialogue that he's trying to give you.
Yeah, I didn't remember that even early Bendis has some of those moments where it's like, can we get to it? I definitely won't lie. Like there were times when I hit on one of those long ass fucking pages with, many word balloons, and I essentially know what they're gonna say, right? And I know that a lot of it's gonna be like the same thing I just read, so I just kind of glaze over it. It happened, a handful of times throughout this reread, and it's not perfect. It's not like even peak Bendis dialogue still has those moments of being annoying. And we are joined now by Marco. Welcome, Marco.
Thank you. Apologies for the delays. The trains were not helpful today.
Trains? You're on the trains?
Trains. Yes, sir, on the trains.
Oh,
The
interesting.
the
Those mornings.
conductors kept talking back and forth to each other, and
Yeah, that's
all the
right.
word bubbles really bogged down the subway.
I'm gonna say I came ready to the book afraid of that because of how you guys have spoken about it, and I have to disagree. There was only maybe two or
Disagree
three
with what?
Yeah,
with
You don't even know what we said.
you just got here.
uh,
We were praising it.
well, he said that there were moments where like you felt like you would glaze over or like that it would be repetitive and maybe to some degree irrelevant because of its repetitive nature. But I thought all of those things played into who she was because of her anxiety, her nervousness. There's a stretch that I sent as an image to look at, to like call out, where it's just like she's a nervous wreck, and I felt that through the way that he was sure he'd repeat words, but I thought that he was characterizing her through those things. I was really scared for a moment of damn, this gets tedious or boring, or but I found it really just telling of how in control he Bendis was of Jessica.
I think I agree with everything you just said. I just wasn't talking about Jessica Jones. I was talking about like there are a million examples.
Yeah, it's a Bendis book.
But
Yeah, I think you're spot on with Jessica because he's very obviously spent a ton of time, in Jessica's head, and he has her dialogue down to a T. But the example that I brought up was one of the side characters, the mother of the girl in the small town, uh, was going to bake Jessica some cookies. I made you some cookies. And it's that repetition that I really found grating because it's still in there.
Well, let's talk about Bendis's idea of Jessica Jones and sort of why Jessica. And let's think about the time we're in. So it's 2001 when this book is first published. And this is at a time where you're not really getting a lot of female-led superhero comics from the big two, especially if there's not like a sexual bend or element to it. Jessica Jones is sexual in a sense. She does have sex with people, but it's not like there's a big difference between like the way Jessica Jones is portrayed and her sexuality versus like a power girl or a somebody like that, right? And so a lot of people have talked about Bendis's penchant for wanting to write minority or women characters and why he tends to do that. This is a very early example of Bendis's desire to do that kind of thing. And so here's why Jessica Jones. Um, I went to my publisher and I went, it's weird. I'm having trouble because now I'm off reservation of who Jessica Drew really is. And this is me now. This was originally supposed to be Jessica Drew. And I've always been fascinated by that. Jessica Jones was not the original character for this. It was Jessica Drew was going to be like an out of continuity story where she would go back to her PI roots, and it would be this. And so the quote continues. Um, and Joe Quesada said, "Yeah, I can tell you at this moment, you're the only person who cares about Jessica Drew. Just create a new character and do what you want to do." He goes on to say, everyone wants to make the corporation the bad guy. And yeah, sometimes they are, but focus when they really are. This is one of those times where I was developing the wrong thing and someone pointed it out to me. I could have done Jessica Jones as a creator-owned book. I could have done it in Image or somewhere like that. I could have done it in the Powers universe, but she belonged in the Marvel universe. Like it had to be a Marvel character who fell. I literally said to Marvel that it seemed that the magic, the true next level stuff, is that this happened in the Marvel universe when no one was looking. They're so busy over there that they didn't see this woman fall. And how interesting is that? You can only do that in a shared universe that has been built up. I thought that was really interesting because I don't know about you guys, but I definitely felt how this could have been something indie. And
Mm.
it feels very much like something indie, but it just happens to have a connection to the Marvel universe that's played at a very base ground level.
It's got a bit of a Astro City vibe to it in the sense where like it feels like a civilian that's in the superhero world,
Yeah.
dealing with the ramifications of that. We'll get to her origin, but her origin's chock full of Easter eggs of other people's origins. And it shows how she really is a small cog in the machine that is the Marvel Universe, and how that cog can just be go unnoticed. And that's what I honestly what I loved about this book.
it feels like he played into the fact that Jessica would be a flexible enough and malleable enough character that she could fit in this universe, like he said, and feel like she was sitting outside of it. That's what I really enjoyed about this was it did feel like a Powers. I think that's an apt uh like tone. But the fact that we get these crossovers with these heroes and the first arc just being, a central Avenger, that threw me for a loop. And I'm like, wow, that cracked open the possibility of what this book is going to be.
Yeah, and it's done in a way where it's like Jessica was always there.
Mm.
Yeah.
She's essentially retconned into the Marvel universe. We see she went to school with Spider-Man, and like Tyler suggested, her origin is and her history is tied to a lot of Marvel characters. And it's something that we would see again with the Century, a character that Bendis would have an affinity for and do a lot with that same concept. I think it works so well here because you don't often get to see Marvel characters like this. Like Scott Lang is Ant-Man, and that's cool. And almost every time you see that character, you're going to see him in costume. You're going to see him having an adventure. He's going to be doing something cool. Here, he's going out with Jessica Jones for coffee or whatever, right? It's so ground level that it actually gives you access to these characters' most intimate realities that we otherwise never ever see. And I think it works the same with Scott Lang as it does with Carol Danvers, as it does with Captain America.
Can I draw this line with you guys? Because I had it in my head of this is what Tom King has grown out of. The on the ground,
Yeah.
I'm a normal character, I'm just
Yeah.
walking around, I am who I am, and this is a costume insofar as I'm a person, but I am a hero when it needs to be when it needs to be.
This, and there's also like a long history of, especially in um Justice League International. Yes. The Giffen and DeMatteis Justice League International, where there, that Justice League book was it had a comedy base to it. And so often what that meant was there were times where you would see a character uh act like a person. Like there's a really famous panel where Blue Beetle is laughing so hard that he has to reach inside his mask and wipe away a tear, and it breaks the superhero, you know, formula, because he's like going through his skin or whatever, the costume, the mask, to wipe away this tear, and it makes his goggles askew, and it ruins that perfect image of the superhero in favor of showing this guy's humanity. And there's a good long line of creators that, like Bendis and Tom King, would have been incredibly inspired by doing this.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison, Marco. Bringing the characters down to that human level, and I think Bendis is able to do that really well here, partially because he doesn't have. I didn't feel like he came into this with something very specific to say uh, in a thematic fashion that it overtakes everything else in the book. Like, certainly there are things to say in this comic, but it feels almost slice of lifey in a way. Like like it doesn't feel like it's all angling towards this one specific point, if that makes sense. And I like that in comparison, I guess, to some of the times where Tom King does a similar thing.
Like, yeah,
Um, yeah,
it's
go
not
ahead.
overarching. Like the arcs aren't overarching.
Right.
Yeah.
There was one last quote I wanted to get to from Bendis before we dive in earnest. Um, and it's about why Jessica has the personality that she does, why she's such a tough person. He said, I created Jessica Jones because I was raised in and I'm married to a strong, independent woman, and we're raising strong women. So I wrote what I know. It's literally all that I know. And he talked a lot about how personal Jessica Jones is to him. He talked about how, he's never been a survivor of the kind of abuse that she went through, and he's not a woman, and this, that, and the third. But that despite that, she's kind of that fierceness that he wished he was. And she's that toughness that he sees in these women that surround him. And I like the fact that Jessica Jones as a character is allowed to be tough as nails, but we also get to see that she's got a vulnerability. And those two things are things that Bendis is balancing very, very well. She's not fragile, but she is broken.
And it's so antithetical to superheroes because superheroes are black and white. It's good and bad. It's rare that you can really see a hero that is neither. She's both things at once. She's flawed and strong, and she is, and that's what makes her appealing as a character, as a hero. Um, and that kind of took me along throughout the book. It's that humanity that we get to her, even so much as like choosing to not wear a costume anymore, which we learn pretty immediately. She used to wear one, I think issue 1. Yeah, they showed the picture of her with Carol and the Avengers, and it's how, oh, I don't do that anymore. That's not my thing. She's just gonna wear a leather jacket and some jeans, and I think that is appealing to the character for sure.
Yeah, and let's dive in. Jessica Jones is introduced to us as a former superhero named her superhero code name was Jewel. And she's the complete opposite of the way that she's portrayed throughout this run. She's got this bright costume, the big smile, the nice bright hair and everything else. And but we're coming in after all of that. That life is over for her. And now she's a private investigator, Alias Investigations, right? And the first arc and change introduces us to Luke Cage, who she meets and has a relationship with. Well, she has sex with, and
Yeah,
and
she
it
meets him, all
establishes,
right.
yeah, meet cute, so to speak. Um, and it establishes her relationship with him. We get to see her friendship with Carol Danvers. We see, Matt Murdock and different people. But there is a core sort of story. She is hired to find Rick Jones, and there's a conspiracy that also somehow involves Captain America. Rick Jones knows Captain America. They were on the same team together. Rick was like a stand-in for Bucky kind of situation as well. So there's a lot. Go ahead, Tyler.
Well, I think you're conflating the first two arcs. The first one was about the woman that has with Captain America, and the whole scheme with the government and the the guy running for president.
President elect. Yeah.
Yeah. And the next arc is the Rick Jones.
Rick Jones.
Okay, so talk about it.
Yeah. So the first arc was, so I had never read this at all, and that first arc, it's very classic noir, where Jessica Jones is in her private eye office with the shade down, the glass door with the name on it. And then she gets the femme fatale that comes in and says, "Oh, I need you to look for my sister," and all that. And I was like, okay, this is hitting all the right beats and the right notes here. And then we learn that this woman is actually Captain America's girlfriend at the time, Steve Rogers, and how this is really a setup from in a very X-Men type way, where the government official is like anti superheroes, and this is even before Civil War, kind of setting up Jessica to get dirt on Captain America that she then either is stuck with keeping or has to give away, and then give away Captain America's identity. Because it also blew my mind that Captain America had a secret identity. I totally forgot that was a thing. And so she's kind of torn between the private eye of it all and the superhero of it all. Does she out Captain America? or does she just play into the hands of these people that are setting her up for this? And I thought it was a I thought it was an interesting opening arc, honestly. I think it really towed the line between noir and this is set clearly in the Marvel universe.
I love that. Like I said earlier, it set me up for what the book could be, not what it was going to be. And I think that that as a premise, I'm like, okay, yeah, she's gonna solve crime. She just happens to be in the Marvel universe. Oh, but it like ties directly to these guys, and they are people. And um, the the conspiracy aspect of it. I think I sent a page on it, Tyler. I don't remember which one it is off the top of my head, but there's a moment where she's like debating about the tape even, and at that point my mind is spinning like, holy shit, is this a conspiracy? Wait, where is this going? What is this book happening? And then she calls the phone and it's like um I don't even remember what it is. It's like a daycare or some shit, right? And I was in the airport reading this and I turned to Jade and I'm like, am I wrong? What's going on?
And then she turned the volume up in her headphones, right?
Yeah, yeah. She's like, "Are you having fun? Okay, cool." But I thought that exact page. Yeah, I was just trying to think about the tape
To
and but it all
microwave a tape, which is a very thing we don't even do anymore. Why is she microwaving the
the
save
film.
icon or whatever?
And I think it was a strong opening for both ends because I think Gatos does such good work here where not only is he presenting this relatively straightforward noir piece, but there's just small attention to details in the paneling. In this case, the panels are split, which obviously you create time. In this example that we have up, it's a single page split up between was it 6 panels with in descending order because it's getting more and more closer to time, but also we're trying to separate the word balloons. She has a lot of individual like pages where it's just black and just a couple panels so you can focus in on the scene that's happening and that way you don't have to think about the extra bits. You were just getting guided along about at a frenetic pace, but still paced evenly. So I thought it was super strong.
Yeah, I I really like the first arc as well. The earliest pages give you such a great window into who she is. It starts off with this conversation she's having with this guy, and she ends up having to toss him out the fucking window of her business, and it's just so the opposite of how you would expect that conversation to go. And again, it's like this is 2001 at Marvel. This is nothing like you're seeing. So the fact that she does that is just so cool, and it gives you a clean understanding of who she is. And then you go right into her with Luke at the bar. And again, two characters, one of them being a very established Marvel hero, Luke Cage created, probably somewhere in the 70s, um, having sex. Like when do you see that at Marvel? That's crazy.
And I think we should see more of it. That's my stance. They're human.
Yeah, it was very it felt very real. Like she's debating about these things and it's not about the sex but the reaction to those things.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think Bendis and Gatos did everything that they could do to make this character feel like a living person within the first issue. Like it's just rare to see this much character development that's so effective so early on.
And
I,
Gatos,
I,
oh, go ahead, Cal.
well, just to add to that character development, not only between not only for Jessica, but Jessica and Luke, but also the world around her. She tries to get a hold of the Avengers, and all she's got is like the public uh Avengers hotline or whatever. And she never like through the whole series, even she even gets Carol Danvers, cell phone number or whatever, and she can't get through to any of them ever. And that's such an interesting uh way that the world works for Jessica Jones, even though there was a time when she was a part of it and like, she's on the wall with these people. She still can't get a hold of them.
She dials up. Your call is important to us. Please wait.
I like to imagine it's in Jarvis's voice too.
Yeah.
It's another example of the world having passed her by. You know,
Hmm.
this is whatever her life trajectory was. It probably didn't involve her being a PI.
Do you think she has a chip on her shoulder about that, though?
I think the whole last arc and the Purple Man stuff proves that she does.
I think it's not so much that she hasn't accepted it. It's that chip is part of who she is.
Okay.
And I always like it when we get to see how the Avengers and Fantastic Four are just not accessible to people. Like we've seen this kind of thing a couple of times, and they're just not. You cannot get them on the phone. It's a nice little joke. Was anybody surprised to open the book and find that her hair was not black?
No.
No, I kept seeing the covers. I'm like, why is she ginger on the covers but not in the book? Like she's a brunette in the book, but the covers are always making her out as a ginger. That confused me. But I was seeing Kristen Ritter though.
Yeah,
I was trying to hear Kristen Ritter.
I was sort of hearing,
but I was seeing Tatiana Maslany, which is
like
wild
an orphan
because
black
this is like
situation. Yeah.
20 years before she would have come up on the scene.
Matt Fisher with a $4.99. Thank you so much, Matt. That is a reminder that super chats are open if anybody wants to contribute and get their voice heard during this portion of our conversation. Matt Fisher says, yo, what's up, cornflakes? Let's raise the roof off the his house. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.
But cheers.
Yeah, and so I don't know what to say to that. This first arc is it's phenomenal comics. I really had a great time reading it. Maybe more so than the rest of it. I like the first arc and the Purple Man one a lot.
I like the first arc was good. I think the end of the first arc confused me a little bit. At the golf course.
Kind of a little convoluted.
Yeah, because it's like all of a sudden we're revealed that she has access to Shield with Clay Quartermain. And then does Shield just kill this dude? They just do like an off the books kind of assassination, right?
I thought they brought him in.
Well, they're shooting. The art is where I was a little off.
The people, his guys, the people on the ground are shooting
okay.
up.
Sure.
Yeah,
got it. Okay.
So then we get into the. I just stumbled on the panel of Jessica Jones using the toilet, and that's another great example though of like the humanization. She's a character who was a superhero. She teamed up with Cap, Miss Marvel, everything, and here she is just on the toilet. Like, when do you see that?
But before we get to the second arc, I just want to call out one thing too in the first arc.
Wait, can we just reference what I just said? Maybe
you want to talk about the dump.
Cale seemed to want to respond.
I hate that. Period. Like that is a trope that exists, and I hate it. I just like, yeah, we all do it. It's fine, whatever. But it's just like, come on, like, do we have to see even that part? Like, I know what they're going for, and I understand, but surely there's something else we could do here for this.
It's a double whammy of being a woman, though. Like at the time, like I'm looking up 2001 Marvel, and the only other books I can see that Marvel was putting out with women as the main character of a solo book was Bendis on Elektra, which was Marvel Knights, and
Bendis was on Elektra.
Marvel Knights Elektra, yeah.
Woof.
And it's those cheesecake Michael Horn covers, I believe. And I think the Maddie Franklin Spider-Woman at the time ended around 2001. But like all the rest are team books. So like having a book with a female lead and she's doing a 1 or 2, maybe a 3 on the toilet, is I get the point. It's probably wrote now, but 2001 in a Marvel comic, that was probably a pretty big deal. That wasn't a trope
I,
at that point.
I'm not saying it isn't.
Sure. Okay.
I'm I'm just saying, and not even like it's a trope, in other things, besides comics as well. It's for me, it's just like there's there's a line of privacy, I think, that even Jessica Jones is entitled to.
Tyler, where were you going to take us?
So the one other bit in that first arc is the dichotomy between Cap and Jessica Jones that I really jumped out to me. Jessica Jones is on the street level, and she works a case where Cap's girlfriend gets killed. Main man Marco, not you, Marco, but like strangles his girlfriend. And by the end of it, he's like, yeah, I kind of feel bad, but I got to be doing Avengers shit. So this like whole idea of him just being like almost above the little guy was like mind boggling to me. Because this is superhero Cap at this point. Brubaker stuff didn't happen. He's still the Sentinel of Liberty. He's an Avenger. And just that idea of like that happened and Jessica Jones is the one dealing with the fallout and not Cap, whose girlfriend it was, really kind of like stood out to me.
I think it was like it felt like a bit of lack of empathy. Like it's like, yeah, damn, she died.
Gotta get a new one,
Yeah, kind of. I can see that, but I can also see how it plays to the story. But it did. I feel like it didn't. It wasn't maybe as satisfying because we didn't see his reaction.
I'd also point out that this book is from her point of view.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I that was my thought. And then also it kind of helps to establish that like in Captain America's world, this is a guy who knows that everyone he ever knew is dead, pretty much. And that the Earth has to be saved from the Kree and the Skrulls and everything else. And like, yo, sometimes I just don't have time for this shit.
Another human life.
Another lady bites the dust.
Damn.
Pretty much. But yeah, then we get into the Rick Jones of it all, and I think this is where the book kind of gets more into like Jessica Jones's, personal life and her relationships and things like that. And I think this is where she also um goes out with Scott Lang. Um I really, really, really enjoyed this whole piece. I thought it was a little bit weird to use Rick Jones in this way, but not really because he is similar to her in that he's kind of in the margins too. Like he's had a whole bunch of weird experiences, but he's also a guy you could find at the corner bar performing with just his guitar, right? Um, and I really liked the pages where it was like a book insert where he's talking about the various characters. I loved his remarks on Bruce Banner Hulk and Cap. I thought those were excellent pages.
And the art in those pages, was that Gatos as well? It almost had like a
That's
Sienkiewicz feel to it.
It's because it is. Yeah.
It is. Okay. It was Sienkiewicz.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So the covers are Sienkiewicz then.
No, the covers are not Sienkiewicz.
But those are Gatos?
The covers for the Alias series?
Yeah.
Those Mac.
I think it might be Mac. Yeah.
Okay.
But no, you're right, Sean. Rick Jones is the perfect like stand-in for Jessica Jones. They were both shoulder to shoulder with the Avengers, and now they're no ones. And like even by the end of the arc, we never really figure out if this is our Rick Jones. It's kind of up in the air, right?
No,
like,
it's not.
Like, or is
Pretty
it? Is
definitive.
it? It's figurative in the sense that because he's in L.A. That's what happens. Yeah,
right. The
find
real
out
one's
he's
in LA. This is just a dude. They know that he's just a dude.
But the fact that it's such a question mark for most of the arc just proves that he is forgotten about. Like nobody really checks in on him. There's not much info on him.
But I think it's a matter of that she's given misleading information, and he is just he's so like enigmatic about it. He's so animated and like she starts to believe him and connects the pieces, less so that it was real. So I think it was like a reality. I took it as kind of like a reality check for her. Like yes, there's comparisons here, but she's not that individual. Like she's not crazed about it. And she was trying to relate. There was moments where they're in the diner. She's just like, yeah, I remember when
That diner bit
like
was
this
great.
kind of stuff happened, and it's obviously fake. He doesn't realize, he can't empathize because he's not lived it.
I thought it was interesting that, he's essentially pining for and playing at having had a life that she really lived and doesn't like the life that she lived, people would kill to live. People would kill to be a superhero. This whole arc to me read, you know, this is a guy who wishes he could have been Rick Jones so bad. Even a character that who gives a shit about Rick Jones, right? But this guy is like, I would kill to be Rick Jones. That's the thing about Jessica's life that she rejects. She doesn't even like the fact that that's a part of her history, but it is. And here in this moment, it's like, damn, I wish I could talk to somebody who would understand me. Turns out this guy was actually lying and pining for your life.
And similarly, and it gets alluded to a couple times, her being Jewel is kind of a nobody, right? Like there's a thing of like, oh, you were on the Avengers. Ah, I didn't really get there, you know. But even so, her life and the situation she's in now is something to strive for, and that's something like the character Malcolm, the kid. He wants to be a PI alongside her. He wants kind of like a taste because he's a fanboy and wants to be able to enter that world, even if it's not where he belongs.
The inclusion of Speedball later in the series was like, oh yeah, that's who she was. She was a Speedball level hero. Like, that's as big as she got.
And if the average person, like if you rubbed shoulders with Captain America and Captain Marvel and whoever, and someone said to you, hey, were you an Avenger? Like you might say, yeah, I was. Even though you really weren't, you'll be like, yeah, I was, because you want that recognition. And she doesn't. She rejects that. She pushes that off. And I think that's a really interesting example of who she is. She doesn't want the attention. She doesn't want the fame for that. Such good stuff. And I thought the remarks on the Hulk, man, for some reason that really impacted me. Like the Hulk is like Bruce Banner was a hero before he ever could turn into a green monster. I love that.
Hulk's Rick's boy, you know. Even when the Avengers forgot about him, the Hulk still, or Bruce remembered him still.
Yeah, yeah. This was just a great, to me, a great sequence.
It
This book has a lot of supporting characters. There are a whole bunch of people who pop in and out of this. Was there any particular favorite that you had? We're not going to necessarily talk about everybody in depth, but
Scott surprised me. Scott Lang, Ant-Man. I had no idea he was in this book. I don't remember ever reading anything where that relationship was even a reference, to be honest. Like even like in Avengers stuff. To be fair, he was probably dead for most of Bendis's Avengers, but um, it was surprising to see him in this. And I think it was a really good addition because he's the successful boyfriend. You know, he's the boyfriend Jessica should be happy to have, and it doesn't quite work out, which is exactly her life. You know, she should have been happy to be a hero. Didn't work out for her, so she rejects it. And I think that's a good foil for her with Scott. But at the same time, like Scott wasn't a bad guy either. Like he wasn't like a douchebag boyfriend. He was just probably maybe not the most understanding of people, and it was in a world that Jessica just really wasn't a part of. And I like that. It again, it's humanizing these characters, not making him bad or good. He's a human. And I think Scott Lang, a flawed character already, who stole the Ant-Man suit to get it, became an Avenger anyway. He's a great character for that. And I was really surprised to see Scott in this, and it was cool to see him throughout.
I think mine was Matt Murdock. I really, I thought the way Jessica interacted with him was really interesting because early on she makes out like she doesn't know he's Daredevil. And she puts up a really solid front around people. Oh, he's not Daredevil. Dude's blind. Come on. Um, but then later on, you know, we know she knows, and she's pretty sure he knows she knows. So she like messes with him. And I just found that whole dichotomy so interesting, on top of the fact that Bendis will not let it go that the entire world that he left Matt Murdock in this position.
Yeah, the whole
And
Daredevil's secret identity being a thing.
yeah. It's it shows the continuity in the world, certainly, and it does it very, very well, but it also hammers it over your head. But I found it weirdly charming.
Yeah.
It's a
I
good
did too,
bit.
because it's like, remember when comics used to reference other comics? Like
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't happen as much anymore, especially in the big two, or Marvel specifically. So like, and also like, I didn't realize in 2001 these characters were so intertwined. Like, sure, the Netflix era made them intertwined, but even back then, I didn't realize that Matt Murdock would even be in this run.
I'd be curious to know how intertwined they were outside of this. You know what I mean?
How often did Luke Cage and Daredevil cross paths
Yeah.
before this era? Yeah, I mean that's a
Well,
Marvel Knights thing, probably. Yeah,
the through line there, of course, is Danny Rand, and I think the Marvel Knights connection. Um, these characters are characters that Bendis clearly loves, and he puts them together constantly. I didn't like the Defenders run, but I love almost every interaction between these characters outside of that. Like everything that
Yeah.
would go on to be done with them.
I think if that Defenders run had happened maybe around this time,
Oh yeah.
I think it would have been phenomenal.
I did when the Daredevil and Matt Murdock stuff happened in this, where she's debating his secret identity. I did almost want to go back to Defenders and look for the issue where Matt reveals himself to everyone, because that happens in that book. Because I
Yeah.
was hoping there would be a reference to it, because there's got to be.
Marco, who was your favorite supporting character?
I like Scott. And in particular the early issue where they just go out on that date. And what stuck out to me was when he tells her, let's do this dry. Don't drink. Um, and I thought it's interesting because like it was a little bold, it is a very much like a first date, but taking charge, and it's okay because we're trying something out, and that feels a little not unsafe, but it does feel a little like we're gauging each other. I can't find the right word, but I really like that because it felt so real. It was very much a situation where like, hey, I like to do things this way. Here's my boundary, and that felt safe. That felt intelligent, emotionally intelligent, and so I really enjoyed that. And then they just had a really good conversation, and I found myself just flipping through the pages. I'm just like, wow, this is very good dialogue. They're butting heads here, but then they're catching out over here, and there's sparks here. So I was very impressed with that, and I liked that. Not will they, won't they, but I liked. Okay, this is working. What's the next step now? Because this was cool.
You know what I liked about it? How boring it was.
I know what you
Like,
mean. But
it
not like
it
not
felt,
mundane.
yeah. Well, even mundane is fine, because in a world where like it's Cap and Peggy, fighting the Nazis in World War II, and they fall in love with each other, or it's Vision and Scarlet Witch, an android falling in love with this woman. No, these are just two people who got set up by their mutual friend, and they're at a cafe talking on an awkward first date that neither of them really knew they were getting set up on.
Can we say holy shit? Remember when blind dates and setups and shit like that? Or like,
My friends are the worst at that. Don't even talk to me about that. I was talking to another single friend about this, and how like the current generation of people are horrible about setting other people up.
At a blind date, you were talking to another single person about this.
No, this was over text. Yeah, I would take a blind date. That'd be fun.
that'd be good. Yeah, all right.
My pick is Luke Cage. I really liked Luke Cage throughout this. Um, I thought the juxtaposition of him and Scott was really interesting because Scott is a superhero, and he has a criminal past at this point. I'm pretty sure, right? Um, but he's a superhero, and you would think that the fact that he has a criminal past would make him someone that Jessica would be able to relate to, but it doesn't, because he's not. That's not as much a part of his personality as her brokenness is a part of her personality. So because of that, they can't really relate. Luke Cage has flaws that he wears on his sleeve as well, and he's broken for different reasons, but in similar ways, and they can see each other's brokenness in their reflections. And I love that fact. They don't fit perfectly, but that's the point. Luke's not going to just say, hey, whatever problems you have, I'll help you. And don't worry, everything's okay. Let's not drink tonight. Luke's the guy that's going to say, let's get drunk, have sex, not talk about our problems, and just chill and be okay together. And that's enough.
Or if we do get together, hey, actually, not right now. I got a girl over. That was crazy. That scene where I was like, oh,
Who do you think it
oh.
was? Was it Tigra? No, Tigra was busy on the west
I
side.
thought it was just like a girl.
He's a cape chaser. This is established, Marco. It's got to be someone.
Yeah. So yeah, for me it would be Luke. I really enjoyed their relationship throughout, but I guess I forgot how little it actually progresses. Like they're not really in a relationship by the end. Like they're kind of getting there, but she is pregnant. So like yeah, a lot more happens later on, I guess.
The actual relationship doesn't start till the end of this book.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I forgot. Pulse is the next book. I totally forgot Pulse existed.
I
I
never
was
read that.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, is there more? Because I want to see how
Yeah.
that continues with this team.
Pulse I think is where she's working for the Daily Bugle. There's a lot more Ben Urich in that, and J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's somebody that was cool to see. Jameson, I did not expect. There was so much I didn't expect about this book and the characters that get included. That whole issue that is like newspaper focused, and they're trying to, it's in like a different painterly kind of aesthetic. I thought was great, and then she plays it up for laughs. She screws them over, but that affects down the road, which again, really interesting how these things are maybe not plotted to be that, but it all ties back together, and I thought that was really well done.
what did you guys think of that? Because that issue happens right after the Rick Jones arc, where it's that painted issue where Gatos does fully painted art, and the script is the text. It's literally like a screenwriting script. It's character name, interior, instead of word balloons. It's all script on it. Because
I
I didn't care much
go
for
go.
it. Just from a clarity standpoint, I think having black text over things, and then when you couldn't see the black text, they would put a white box. I didn't care much for that. I liked the chutzpah, I guess, to do it. It was nice to see the machine behind it all, but I don't think it landed for me. I didn't care much for that issue, to be honest. Art was great, but the actual storytelling device of the script, I didn't care for it.
I
Yeah,
fucked with it.
please.
That was it.
Okay. The yeah, the lettering was difficult in a lot of places. But I really felt like I heard the voices a lot more through the text, and even just like um a cursory glance at the art. I really felt, especially with Jonah, really felt like I was in the Bugle. So yeah, mixed bag. I think overall, I think I lean positive.
I got the point, but I didn't like the issue. It was hard to read. I didn't
That was
think
my issue.
the lettering situation was very smart. Um, and I like the art, but the lettering laid over the art, it was kind of frustrating to look at sometimes. And I just felt like it didn't land. Like I like the concept, but the execution just wasn't right for me.
And I gotta imagine in the year 2025 that could be done better on computers, because it's 2001. It's probably experimental at this point. Even there's some pages where the art's on one side and then you just have the text on in the gutters, on either side of the book depending on the page turn. But yeah, I'm with you, Sean. Good effort. Interesting choice. But it didn't do much for me.
I thought that some of the moments where the text was off and it made it difficult to read were difficult because of the position that J. Jonah Jameson was in. He's a cigar smoker, and it became overwhelming. And the page that I pulled out of here specifically,
I think that's very
uh,
generous.
what?
I think it's very generous to
Yeah.
think that. Yeah, it's
It-
2001. I don't think
I could be
computers can
reading
run
into
this
it.
yet.
But the page I pulled out specific to this that Tyler has up, that's what I felt a lot of the time. There were like, especially the close up on this, there were moments where it's just like when he was smoking, it got closer. It was off color in certain situations. The smoke trailed into the darker colors, and then otherwise he'd be turned away or doing something else, and then you'd use like clearer boxes. It could be a stretch, but something I thought I noticed.
And this is where the distinction didn't work for me. It's that it felt like art, and then the text put on top of it, rather than working together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's just like, oh man, well the art's a little dark here. Do I add a white stroke to the lettering?
That's yeah. They would tell yeah. In my job, they would tell me to do a thicker white stroke.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the third arc. I guess if you even break it down that way. The one with um the one with Maddie Franklin, the new Spider Woman, new at the time. And the fact that she lived with Jonah and his wife, she gets kidnapped and she's being used essentially she's being used for her powers to get people high, and to give people powers basically. This was really like dark and heavy, and it took a character in Maddie Franklin who is just like a young spider person, and it gives her character, I guess, but it darkens her up in a way that's almost like, wow, I'm surprised they allowed this.
Maddie Franklin, you'd recognize her from being in the spectacular Madam Web movie. For any fans out there,
Which one was
okay.
she?
figuring that out now, that was portrayed by Celeste O'Connor.
Oh,
You're familiar
remind me
with
to
that
look that
actress,
up.
right? Yeah. I thought it was gross, Sean. I agree. I thought it was a really messed up arc. I think the whole idea of like a mutant growth hormone has existed in comics since I've been reading it.
Yeah.
And I never really thought about how it comes to be. And the idea that they're really smoking the flesh of a mutant is vile. There's that one issue where Jessica has to doll herself up, which is like, that issue was like the most, was like, all right, this is written by a man. Issue out of everything so far. But she has to doll herself up to get into this club, and there's she sees Maddie strung out of her mind, and then her abusers and the drug dealer she's with are literally cutting flesh off her back, and I think where her wings are typically, or her she has some bit. She's the least familiar Spider Woman I am with, but they're smoking her flesh is disgusting, and I guess that's pure grade MGH. And I was like, oh, nope, cool. Let's never touch that one again. But it was real. It was real because like that is also a character that was being published at the time. It's not like a no name. Like I looked, she had a series in 2001. That was Spider-Woman Volume 3 at that point.
Hmm.
So
Well, and didn't we say earlier that Bendis had just ended that run or something?
No, Bendis was working on Elektra at the time. Spider-Woman was the only other solo superhero woman book that I could see in 2001.
Okay.
To have at least had one issue in 2001. Everyone else is a team book. I could be wrong. That was really quick math, but
I see.
Yeah.
This is the grounded, fucked up, gross in the goodest way that this book gets, and I loved it. Like uh, it made what was already a serious and dark book. I'm like, oh, she swears, she has sex, she smokes, this is that. Where could they go? We're gonna freebase fucking mutant flesh. What? Ugh, yes, crazy. And and it made it sentimental. It hurt. Like there was even the character in it who's like she's waiting for to take her hit. She's like, oh, I hate this part. Smile on her face, but you sick fuck. What? Oh God, that was so good. That was my favorite arc.
And think of the powers you could do if you butt chug that too. Like if you take a real jack line, who knows?
Also, the Tyler, your comment earlier on this issue being written by a man, she addresses that. Uh, uh, Jessica Jones is like, I'm coming in here. I can come in here. Obviously, I can come in here. The bouncer's like, no, being a dick, right? And then she dresses up and she hates the fact that she does this for the sake of getting into the club to appease to the gaze and lure of a man. That was self aware.
It just felt like the most I only watch movies, I don't go to clubs type thing.
Nah,
It's
bro.
like Bendis saw Night of the Roxbury one day and he decided to do his own stuff.
I've gotten stopped and be like, nah, you can't go in like that. You don't got the right shoes. I get it.
I love the fact that Jessica Drew made it in here.
Just gonna mention that, yeah.
You guys that listen to my newsletter know my affinity for Jessica Drew, and she's one of my favorite characters. I was so happy that she was here. And of course, again, it's funny that this was originally intended to be Jessica Drew's book, so Bendis managed to sneak her in. Anyways, I like that she was along for the ride here a little bit. And again, a great character to illuminate sort of the weirdness of being a superhero. Think about her past. Think about the manipulations that she's been through and sort of her career trajectory as a superhero. I thought she was a perfect inclusion.
Well, and especially later on, who knows who this person is?
That's
What
a
with
good point.
her Secret Invasion connection. No spoilers, I guess.
Spoilers to what a 15-year-old comic.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
No,
Don't do
no
it. I haven't read it.
spoilers. 30 years ago for this 20
La la la
20
la
year
la.
old spoiler.
Do you think this is one of those things where like Bendis was like, all right, we're 20 issues in. Let me just do what I want to do at this point. We got traction.
Yeah.
I got rope now.
Yeah.
I thought the interactions with Jessica and Drew were interesting because there are moments where they have such a similarity. Like there's this thing of like checking under the bed, super small thing, throwaway detail, but they both don't want to do it and they want the other person to do it, and they have a little back and forth between it. We're just like, oh, these are meant to be the same people. They're gonna bump heads a little bit in some of those moments where like, I don't want to do this. Actually, that's your job. Nope, that's your job.
And I love the one bit where it's like they understand each other because they both know Carol. That's as far as it has to go. It's like, well, if you know Carol, I trust you. It's fine.
Yeah.
Then we get into the tail end of it, and I thought there was an interesting way that this was broken down. Like this is pre or near the idea of writing for the trade. And so the arcs are not all 6 issues. They're kind of broken and bunched, which I really enjoyed that reading through this. Like I didn't like an arc would end and I would be like, oh, I thought there was going to be one more to go. Or you could see how something would be stretched more if you had to make it 6 issues, and this doesn't really suffer from that. But we get into the secret origins of Jessica Jones, which is just issues 22 and 23 that show her origin. It shows her as a kid, and how her family died, and how she got her powers. Or how she learned, she had her powers or whatever. It shows her in school with Peter Parker, and she had a crush on him. It's not a long thing by any means. It's literally just the 2 issues, but you get a sense of who she was as a young person, why she changed and became this way. I think it's a really effective couple of issues, even if I was surprised by the time they ended, because I was like, oh shit, there's no more of this.
Well, I love those issues. Mark Bagley. I love Mark Bagley, especially early 2000s Mark Bagley. So seeing him doing those origin issues, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Great. And then like the way it starts, where like she's this nerd a la Peter Parker, and it looks like she's there at the inception of him getting bit by the spider.
Yeah.
And then she leaves that, and then she tries crossing the street, and she just narrowly avoids these chemicals which were the ones that hit Daredevil. You know, like she keeps missing these other people's origins just off the jump. And like even like the military like her dad works for Tony Stark Iron Man. She sees the Fantastic Four right outside her window when she comes out of a coma. And I think even the bit where uh the military trucks are caused the accident. In my head, that was Screaming Hulk. Like they were going to head to Arizona in the desert for that. I don't know if that's the case, but like that's what the book made me think at that point.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, she's so tied to the Marvel universe, but always on the periphery. And I thought it was
Forrest
great.
Gump.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's a great analogy, actually. Yeah. And having Bagley do that, who had done plenty of stuff before, but with Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man.
You were thinking of not to pull a you here, but you're thinking of the superhero stuff Kilgrave in the Kilgrave issues later on. I think that the origin stuff in those 2 issues is still Gatos.
No,
No,
Bagley.
that's still Bagley. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Gatos.
Is it
At
really?
least as far as the
Oh,
credit
that's not gonna
goes,
work.
yeah. Issue
Oh,
22.
yes. Okay, yes. I had a thought about this. You're right. You're right. It's the origin, but it's colored very differently, and that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about. Yeah, the way that it's colored is colored like a traditional superhero comic. It's zero purples and grays and browns and all primary colors. That's what I wanted to talk about. Good. Thanks for shouting me out, Cale. Because that is a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought these issues were awesome. I love the fact that she's watching the Galactus, arrival, and that whole thing happened in front of her. And I felt like most of the time a superhero's origin involves their parents being dead. Um, Less often are they there for it, and she was there for it. She was there for it. She was in a coma for however long, and it's just like, damn, girl, you've had it rough. You've had it really rough, and it adds so much context to everything we've seen sort of come before.
And like we talked about it earlier, we joked about the Peter Parker of it all. That one bit where he goes up to her on the bleachers, and he understands that her family died, and whether or not she might have been the cause of it is irrelevant, but he has that urge to talk to her and speak to her as somebody who's experienced something similar, and she just shuts him off, and I'm like, that's her. That is a great way of expressing who Jessica Jones is.
Well, and also him, because he phrases it wrong.
Yeah, he fucking fumbles it. Yeah.
Like he completely is like, "Oh, I feel bad for you." And like she obviously takes that the complete wrong way. But he also is like why would you say that? Like
Yeah, I gotta say, I really loved Peter in this because he feel like at this point, he feels out of place. After everything we've seen and all the cursing and sex and everything else, Peter doesn't feel like he belongs here, even though these 2 issues are sort of visually aping the style of comic in which this version of Peter is most prominent. So I really loved that fact. And I love that he's still just a dumb dude. He doesn't know the right thing to say. And at this time in his life, he certainly didn't. And Bendis was able to capture that really effectively.
And in such little pages too. Like we never see Spider-Man in this. We just see Peter.
Yeah.
And like he really synthesizes who Peter Parker is in a span of a couple of pages, really.
Hell yeah. Loved it, loved it, loved it.
If Marvel really wants to do something, give us that Bendis Peter Parker Spider-Man main continuity book that we've never had.
I will always wish for it, but man, I don't think it's ever gonna happen. The last arc, though, I think is what this book is most memorable for. And I think is probably the reason why maybe it's not the reason we got a Jessica Jones show, but I think it highly influenced it because the last arc is the one that utilizes Purple Man and shows sort of Jessica's the part of her origin that relates to him. And again, I really love the way this has played out. We just got the 2 issues that
Yep.
show her life up until her high school years and that stuff. and the death of her parents. And then this is still an origin, but it ties into her present day. Uh, these people who Purple Man he killed their family members or whatever. They want him to claim these murders and these victims, and he won't. And so they go to Jessica to try to get her help, and she now has to relive and trudge up all these horrible memories of what he did to her. And it is really, really fucked up. The Jessica Jones television show, goes further than the comic book does. In the comic book, there is no sexual assault that Jessica Jones that happens to her.
Hmm.
It's specifically that Purple Man makes her watch and makes her want it, but he won't give it to her. The show takes it a step further than that, and there is sexual assault that happens to Jessica Jones on the show. And so I've got a comment from Bendis. I thought it would be interesting to hear what Bendis thought about that change and if it impacts the story in any way. And so this is what he said. He said, "I thought in a way the more horrifying idea was that he didn't and could have and made her think she wanted him to, that the mental essay was worse than the physical sexual assault. People reach out to me almost daily on social media and express how cathartic the show was to them, and that they went into the comic and it was even more cathartic. Whatever the real thing that real person was going through is so much more important than Jessica's fake made up stuff. So I always get a little squirrely when talking about it, but at the same time, I don't discount that a show like Jessica can make people feel better or more normal. I just feel, as a dude who has never been through anything like this, that even talking about it feels weird. But I'm glad the show is there for people who need it for that reason. So my question for you guys is, um, did you think that it was played better in the show or in the comic? Do you think Bendis's instincts were correct not to do that? What are your thoughts?
I'm of two minds about it. I will say I love I like the final arc, and I love the Jessica Jones show. That first season is phenomenal. David Tennant, horrifying. Um, but I'm of two minds about this. I think the bits where Jessica gets to recount and talk to Luke Cage, and finally like the faucet is on and she's letting her emotions out, I thought were super powerful. Somebody dealing with trauma finally being comfortable enough with someone in an almost unexpected way, and being able to just talk about it. And sometimes talking about it is the best thing you can do. I thought that was great. I thought the way Bendis wrote that was phenomenal. I thought for a final arc, it was a little too passive in terms of what's happening in the finality of this series. Because it's about 4 issues of talking, and then the last issue has a whole bunch of action in it. I had an issue with the pacing of that, and I think Purple Man is more effective in the show than he is in the book, because we only really get to see him through flashbacks and through the lens of Jessica. We don't really get to see him himself in the comic. That being said, I do think it is an important thing that that Bendis wrote this, um, because this kind of story being told in superhero comics, I think it was revolutionary at the time, especially for Marvel. And um, it's just good to be able to tell those types of stories, even if you didn't live it. I mean, it's probably hard to tell it if you did live it, but um, I did like this arc. On the whole, though, I think the show did it better. They had more room though, and they had the foresight and the hindsight of the previous stuff happening.
Um, I don't know that one did it better than the other. I like that they did it differently. If anything, it feels kind of like, um, it kind of felt like me coming back to Watchmen after having watched the movie. I'm like, oh, I like this origin. Wait a second, but it's this way. Actually, it plays. They both play. I do think that for the sake of the comic, I prefer that that Bendis didn't go down the direction of sexual assault. Um, And I think for the TV show, that works fine. Like it could be, it could have been either or. Not that there's a preference, but for me, I liked how most of it in the comic was just the anxiety of what's going to happen when he gets out, if he gets out, and then when he finally does, it's only a couple pages really that she's under his control. And the Scott stuff, right? So like at most less than half that last issue, and it ends quick. It ends with her overcoming that. Obviously, she had something with Jean Grey that helps her, but she overcomes at the end of the day, and that to me, in a physical way, because it wasn't physical, felt more cathartic for Jessica in the comic.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting twist because I haven't I haven't seen the show, but I sort of know um the lore around it. Um but the I guess I just never really put that idea together. So the idea that the Purple Man would hold hold her at that type of arm's length, and that would actually be just as harmful, without the physical side of the sexual assault. um I thought it was really interesting, but I think given that we only had what, 3 issues, 2 issues to really live with the Purple Man in general, and like we have this really intense uh backstory that we have to live with, and we have to um make sense of this character that we've lived with for you know 25 previous issues, and we've gotten to know to a degree, but now we're really learning who she is. That uh we didn't get to spend that same time that the show is able to give the Purple Man, I think was the right call. Because I David Tennant really puts it out there. You know, this dude is a bastard. He's a fucking asshole. Um, and you know, it's even worse that David Tennant is like one of the most beloved actors out there right now, right? And even then, um, and so it's all wrapped up in this package of charisma that makes that moment for the show so much worse. And in a really specific way, Bendis had to tackle that feeling in 2 issues, but not go that way. It's so interesting that dichotomy.
So, to me, I think it's really worth, like in my mind, it's worth considering the audience for both. The comics, especially at the time, probably read by like 90% men, right? Whereas the show had a huge female audience, and it was also, female led behind the scenes. Melissa Rosenberg is the creator of the show, and Bendis talked a lot about their conversations and the things that she wanted to do with the show that might conflict with what Bendis did. Notably, they couldn't use Captain Marvel because she was going to become Captain Marvel. So they had to use Patsy Walker in the Captain Marvel position. And, Bendis was very happy with that. Bendis felt comfortable with the fact that Melissa was telling the story that was right for the story that she was telling. And I think Bendis made the decision that was right for the story he was telling. Bendis did something that was arguably I don't use this word to denigrate anything. It's just because of the tropes of comics, it felt a little bit more creative and different to go down the road that he did, and he used Purple Man's power in a way that was just a little more interesting. So I like that. But the show it does a deep dive into this woman's pain and trauma, and I think that's something that if you've been through that, you can really connect to. No one can connect to being mind controlled, right? But you can connect to that visceral act, um, and the catharsis that Jessica is able to get through the show by beating the shit out of that guy ultimately.
The comics lived more in the comic booky world that it was in, so it could play with that a little more, whereas the Netflix show really didn't. It was siloed. Yeah, I could see that. Oh, one issue I did have with the Purple Man arc, the Genus Ex Machina of of Jean Grey showing up in this. Forgot she was even
Oh
alive
yeah.
at this point. It made sense that psychic blockers being a thing in comics makes sense. You understand it at this point. But a little part of me was like, oh, that seems awfully convenient. Jean Grey
No.
helped her out during her coma, hasn't aged since, even though Jessica Jones was in high school at this point. There was a part of me that was like picking it apart, and I didn't want to. And it was kind of taking me out of it a bit.
It was a projection, a psionic projection.
But in the costume of where she was currently at the time during Morrison's New X-Men.
Oh, sure. Well,
Wait,
Yeah,
you're
what
saying that the projection that Jean was wearing the costume from New X-Men?
Yeah, when she shows up in the towards the end of that arc, she's wearing the New X-Men costume.
She's wearing her. You're talking about in Jessica's mind because she's wearing the Phoenix costume.
No, later on.
Okay,
Later
gotcha,
on,
gotcha.
yeah, not when she's a kid. When she's like, hey, I left this trigger in your brain just in case, because who knows if you'll ever need psychic blockers again. Here you go. Here's here's a boon. Here's a gift.
Oh yeah, okay. I guess as I was reading, I made that connection um in the that it would be like a blocker for the Purple Man. But that would have happened way after she got her powers or whatever. So I guess overall it didn't bother me. I think it was more of a seed that Bendis planted that, he was able to pay off.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked, again, that interconnectivity. I really appreciated the fact that they were able to. It could have been anybody. Obviously, I'm personally happy it was Jean, but the fact that they include the idea that hey, people there in Marvel comics, this is something that can happen, and that's the way you would get out of a situation like this in Marvel comics.
I guess that just leans into more of this is of its world that it's in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we haven't really touched on it, but she gets her ass beat by the Avengers because of the Purple Man's machinations. And, at this point, we don't know why she decided to stop being a hero or what came in between her and being a superhero. And we learned that, she was made to go attack Scarlet Witch, and the Avengers just come at her with full force because they just came from the Kree Skrull War or whatever, and they're still hot. And they just beat her into a coma. And I mean, for me, it was like, wow, the Avengers kind of sucked in this moment, actually, because they went right to it.
I think it goes to show they suck it through this whole book.
They
Like they
kind of
just
do.
suck.
Yeah, specifically the Vision too. Like
Well,
I know he's a little more extra pissed off, but he just sucker punches her. And this guy is pure density. This guy is going too hard. And like they live in that world too that we talked about. They should know. Like, okay, hold on a second. Let's see what's going on here. Something's going on.
no, because superheroes are punch first, ask questions later. I thought it fit,
yeah.
and in this context, that felt to what
Hero
Stan's saying
versus
here.
hero,
It felt
yeah.
disgusting. It did feel violent and gross because yeah, that's how they deal with shit. That is how they deal with shit. They could, and then and to me, them saying, "Oh, sorry, we were hot off of bullshit," because you don't do that anyway.
And you know what I think is interesting is it's the men that go after her. it's Carol that
Yeah.
catches her and gets her away from the fight because she knows who she is.
Thor was ready to kill her in one shot.
Well, so was Vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
That was it's good.
good.
And her consolation prize was like, hey, you want to be a shield Avenger? You want to work for us instead? Which is just like, come on.
We foot the bill.
Which I think is funny that I think when Bendis does write Spider-Woman, that's what her role is, right? Isn't she like a shield liaison to
Oh yeah,
the Avengers?
yes.
Yeah.
God, I'd kill for that job. Not for any reason, just the steady paycheck, the steady good paycheck.
Government money. That's true. You
That's right.
Might be a Doge cut now though.
Remember in Spider-Man when he gets invited to join the Avengers and Tony's like, "Yeah, we have like housing and stuff," and Peter just gives him a hug.
That's me, dog.
That's Hickman's Avengers, right?
We have money. Oh, thank God. I double checked the Jean. The reason I thought Jean planted the blocker because of Kilgrave is because that's what she says.
She did, right?
Yeah,
No,
because
no, she didn't. She planted it the first time because she comes out of the. Oh no, you're right.
because the
I'm
Avenger,
right.
you were right the first time. Yeah, because it was the first
Okay.
Kilgrave incident
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Scarlet
that
Witch.
puts her
and
into a
all that.
coma. They wake
Yep.
her up because they figure it all out. And Jean comes, Jean comes to wake her up. And now she's in there because of another Kilgrave accident. Sweet.
The
I
idea
love
that
being right.
Nick Fury had Jean Grey on speed dial, I was like, when the fuck do those two interact? Like, that's a weird combo.
It's not speed dial. Nick Fury has everybody.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, he's got a life model decoy right next to everyone.
Yeah, I just thought this whole arc was great. The only thing I came away wishing by the end was that there was a little more of it. But I think everything Bendis did was really effective.
What happens here? And Bendis addresses it at the end, in his afterword. He says he finished it and then he realized, oops, I did everything I wanted to do. I tied up this character and now I think I'm done. And I really like when I wasn't crazy hot on the whole thing, but then when I read all the way through, I sat with it a minute. I went, actually, yeah, I feel good about where I'm at with Jessica and this character and the way that everything has played out through this book. There's a lot that I didn't appreciate and wouldn't do, especially in this, the year of our Lord 2025. But for what it is in 2001, I think it's a pretty solid book.
Man, imagine a writer artist team with no breaks in between besides the purposeful storytelling devices getting 28 issues at Marvel. Not anymore. And I think this is good. And the fact that Bendis pretty much shepherds this character consistently in his runs until I think Kelly Thompson takes control of Jessica Jones in when Marvel did, during the Netflix era of stuff. There's Pulse, there's the Avenger stuff, there's Defenders, there's Jessica Jones, the sequel, which is Alias, but with Jessica Jones in the title. So having that knowledge is like, yeah, this makes sense as an end. This is the end of Alias investigations. It comes back later on. But the Pulse is the next step, which I really want to read now because I realize fucking Mark Bagley is on the first 5 issues. Because that's her story at the Bugle and stuff like that. And it's more of an ensemble cast, and that's exciting to me. But man, I'm happy I finally got to read this for sure.
Tight. This was it impressed me a lot. And for what I feel like a lot of what Marvel does now, this is entered a different kind of like echelon of a combination of maturity but strong art and consistent storytelling.
Yeah, like when I say, and I think when people say, some people, that they miss the way Marvel used to be, this is an example of what I'm talking about. It's the risky, kind of gambly storytelling that is willing to go there and feel that interconnectivity. I mean, this is a Marvel Max book, so it's in continuity, but it's a mature reader's book, and they didn't shy away from showing you a lot of characters that typically would not be in this kind of environment at all. You would never ever see like a Thor, for instance, in a Marvel Max type book, but here he is, and he's not cursing and throwing his dick around. But it's the first time where it's like all these shining superheroes don't feel like they fit in, and that's interesting to me. And I wish that we could get stuff like this still, but what it does is it makes me appreciate this era so much more, and the willingness that Marvel had to try stuff out. Joe Quesada deserves a lot of credit for this. Michael Gaydos and Bendis, though, they had an idea and they ran with it. They ran with it. This was the first Marvel Max comic. They led the line with this. They took a huge chance, and I think it paid
Huh.
off.
And even new characters at Marvel, like Jessica Jones might be the best one, and then like Miles Morales. So Bendis has a knack for this.
And Riri Williams,
Sure,
who
getting a
has a
show.
show coming out imminently. Like this guy, say what you will, he did a lot for women and minority characters at Marvel.
Yeah.
Um, Easy recommend. I mean, I think this is a book you should probably have read. Like you should probably have this in your collection somewhere. You should probably have read it, especially if you are interested in the way that Marvel used to be. If you're a newer reader and all you know is the last decade or so, check this out.
I think some of it is of a time in terms of uh way people talk, but I still think it's a really good book. And it's an easy recommend for like honestly, if you're like a fan of like I don't know, like The Wire or just like prestige HBO TV, this feels like a Marvel HBO comic. Um, that's kind of how I would pitch it if you had no idea of what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And I'd
Yeah.
recommend it on that alone.
I would say the way it feels of a time is one, they mention a Palm Pilot, which I thought was absolutely disgusting.
That Prince.
How dare you throw that back in my face? Um, but also like a lot of the language, it's not just cussing and swearing. They really throw around the R word. I found a lot that made me just wildly uncomfortable again in the year of our Lord 2025.
Luke Cage saying the N word written by a white dude.
Not great.
I have
That's
no
that's
yeah,
oh
I have no
Hey,
reaction to that.
It's
yeah.
it is the character for sure.
Like from my perspective, regardless of the skin color of the writer, I want them to write true.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
Bendis felt that was writing true, then I'm down with that, and I'm sure he wouldn't do that now, but I'm not mad that he did it then.
And it only happens once and for a specific sentence that Luke Cage
Yeah.
has to have emphasis on. So yeah.
Classic, a classic. You guys nailed it. Thank you for the recommendation. Thank you for voting in the book club poll that led to this book being selected to represent Bendis Month. Um, Certainly one of the finest books that could have been chosen. So thank you for everybody's interaction with that. If you have comments and stuff that you want us to read related to Alias, get them in. Let's talk. We haven't heard from you guys much yet. There are a bunch of comments in the chat, so let's get them in. And a little bit later, when we're ready to wrap up in a few minutes, we will let you know the next month's theme, which I think you guys will be really excited about. Here's one from Dan Trudeau who says, check out Fortune and Glory by Bendis for a really fun background on his life coming right up onto this era. That's something I haven't read by Bendis yet. It's like a autobiography, so to speak, but it's following his life up into a point. And then I think he did another one and there's another one coming, or there's another one coming and that would only be the second one. But either way, that's definitely something that I want to check out.
Isn't there isn't it isn't part of that a musical?
Yes, and I think the musical one is the second one, and it reflects on his time with Turn Off the Dark, the Spider-Man
Broadway show.
Broadway show.
Yeah.
Whoa, he did that?
I think he had a part of it.
Consulted.
I
He
could be,
did some of
He
it.
consulted.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yo, I
Man,
saw
I
that
remember
as a kid.
Yeah, me too. The Green Goblin had a loogie that landed right in my face when he flew over me.
What?
I saw it too. Tyler, you
What?
want to tell? Yeah.
I saw it during
Wow.
previews, so I saw it when he got stuck.
That's funny that you were
Incredible.
there for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it was a good 8 minutes of him just like, and he had to like stop what he was saying and just start talking.
Marco, you said you saw it when you were a kid. How? What do you mean, kid? You're not that much younger than me.
Didn't it come out when we were like 10, 11?
Hell
can't say
no,
we.
brother. No, that came out. That's like maybe a decade ago, somewhere maybe a little more than a decade ago.
No,
Absolutely. It's not from when we were 10 years old.
10 years old
Spider-Man.
would be Spider-Man 1,
Yeah.
maybe 2.
The premiere was in 2011.
Okay.
So Marco was 10.
Yeah, that still distracts from Marco. He would have been in what his mind would perceive as a child.
His face right now.
Marco, how
I'm
old were
like,
you in
wait, what?
2011?
2011? I was like maybe 15?
I guess that could
Oh,
be a
shit.
kid. Yeah, that could be.
Okay.
It could be
I
perceived
thought I
as
was
a child. then, yeah.
younger.
Hold on. Marco, how old are you?
31?
So how the fuck were you 15 in 2011?
Yeah.
I'm 34. You're 3 years younger than me. In 2011, I was 21.
I would have been turning 16.
That's 6 years difference. Or yeah, that's 15. That's me being 21 and you being 15.
18 would you, if you're 31 now, you would have been 18, 13 years ago.
No, 2011, I was graduating high
This-
school. I wasn't 18 to go to
Marco,
college.
there can't be a discrepancy.
Yeah,
there's
there's-
only math.
You were
There's
18
only
in
math.
2011, Marco.
No, that I graduated at like
How you
Okay,
say
then you might be
no?
wrong on your current age then.
Are you 31 or not?
I am. Wait. So
Did you see it? Did you
Those COVID
see
years
it
really
in
fucked us
previews
up,
like
huh?
Tyler did, maybe?
Then previews would only
What?
be maybe because it premiered in June 2011, so like previews would have happened April earliest. So it
Okay.
still would have been 2011.
Marco wondering what's his age again.
Yo, I'm really struggling out here, dude.
Oh my goodness.
Also, like, why is the idea of you going to college at 18 a wild thought? That's normal.
Well, but I didn't.
Well,
I'm
that's
not sure
that's-
you know anything.
That's why it's a wild thought
about your
because he
life.
didn't.
Cause when the fuck did I graduate? When did I go to high school, dude?
Who are you?
Who am I?
Oh, so you're only a year younger than me?
Hayden calling him out. Remember, Marco's the numbers guy.
And I'm very concerned, Hayden, now. Very concerned.
You know, he's in charge of our bank account.
No. Taxes are in a good spot.
Oh my goodness. There was a good question unrelated to Marco's inability to math.
Oh, I have one.
Go for it.
Mike Hank, still surprised it's 2001. Would have thought late 2000s. My question is, what do you guys hope is the future for Jessica Jones in comics? I mean, if this is the candle, this is the standard for what I envision Jessica Jones in comics to be moving forward. I would hope for this, but I do not expect it. It will never hit this in my mind again. It would have to be something, I would hope, crime related still Alias, all those kinds of things for me to be thoroughly impressed and enjoy.
You know,
Jessica Jones is interesting because she very much is a character who feels like a person in a way that a lot of other superhero characters don't, because we see so much of her life play out. I could almost never see anything of her again and be fine because I feel like I've seen
Yeah.
her grow up. I saw her get pregnant. I saw her have the child. I've seen the child grow up. Like, I'm so good on her because I've been satisfied.
I was gonna make that joke. I don't think about Jessica Jones. one, like literally, I I know her from New Avengers where she was, mom basically, and then I've read this 20 years later. I didn't see the show. I don't particularly have a thought about Jessica Jones in the future, but also like similar to like we talk about Peter Parker being the ever present bachelor. Jessica Jones, like we like Sean just said, we've seen her life. Like she is a person. She doesn't want to be a superhero. So what not what could somebody do, but like I don't have a prediction as to what somebody could do.
Well, if that's the case, then Marvel's doing the right thing because she's pretty much nowhere to be seen at this point. The most we see her is when she's Luke Cage's wife and mother of his child, which is kind of a bummer in my opinion, because I feel like we never really got too much of her in a solo story as a mother of a young child. Sure, it was a baby. Sometimes in babies in comics, they're just objects at that point. They're MacGuffins. Um, the child has a personality a bit now. It's she's older. So I would still like to see that Jessica Jones, Luke Cage parent book that we were always teased with. Sure, it was probably towards the latter end of New Avengers. We got a bit of that, and we got a little bit of it in when Bendis helped plot and David F. Walker wrote Power Man and Iron Fist, Sanford Green book with Flaviano as well. Marco, check out that book. That is a phenomenal book, Power Man and Iron Fist. But we got a little bit of it there. But since then, it's been kind of missing, and I would like to see that. Like Luke Cage is the freaking mayor of New York City, and he's nowhere to be found most of the time. Which is a kind of a condemnation of Marvel's choices to use or how
Political
they use
system.
Well, that and also their use of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones since the Netflix shows have been off air. They've been pretty much gone from the comics most of the time, which is a shame.
I think it's a symptom of the general lack of interest on the part of the big two to use non-superheroic characters. I think Jessica Jones could be a tremendously interesting character without using her powers, but that just doesn't seem to be something that Marvel cares for. That being said, though, uh, the Avengers could have her there. Like Luke could be there. Like I just feel like there's a place for a character like that that doesn't necessarily have to involve her being the titular
costume.
character of a book or in a costume. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thanks for the question. Hayden's Hideout asked if this made it into our top 5 or top 10 Bendis books.
Ooh, I'd have to think about that. But Jessica Jones was my top character by Bendis, and this solidifies it.
Yeah. Of the 5 I haven't read, yeah.
Wait, Marco, is this your only Bendis Marvel book?
A little bit of Ultimate Spider-Man, like maybe like 2-3 trades at most.
It's wild to me.
Yeah.
I mean, understandable, but wild. It's coming from where I come from.
If we put his whole Avengers run together, which seems like a cheat, then yeah. But if we don't, then I don't know.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Very similar to you, and I imagine you're about to say the same thing. There's so much, and I really love most of it, especially in the Marvel years. I would really have to think about it. I might even have to go back and revisit some of it, which I think would taint it.
It's like hard to say. So much of it is like I haven't read in very, very long time. So much of it is like you don't know where one thing ends and the other begins because it's like New Avengers, Dark Avengers, Mighty Avengers. What happened in this versus that? It's tough.
Even in this, the raft breakout happens with Carnage.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, oh, there's Bendis referring to his own work again.
Although I don't know if that was the same raft breakout because that's the new Avengers
Civil War.
New Avengers is 2005, no?
Yeah, but there was a Carnage breakout.
I would have thought it was
right?
earlier than
that. Maybe I'm
Civil War really is a point where like I get lost about what happens before and after sometimes.
Well, it's so like within months. I remember thinking this is the raft breakout and then going, wait, is it the raft breakout? But in any event,
The Raft breakout was Electro, right? Didn't he break everyone out?
yes,
But then
yes,
Carnage, there were
2005.
yeah.
yeah. So this is a different one, but still, like Bendis going back to that well, um, because it was a good idea. I feel like there are a couple of instances of that throughout this where you can see um, he does something that he would go on to do again.
Johns did that a few times too with Kondak and Black Adam. You know, they felt like they kept keeps trying to make that happen and it never quite catches.
Atomic Hound says it's not the new Avengers breakout. Luke Cage takes out Purple Man during that one, so he doesn't escape.
That's what I thought.
And this is the first appearance of the Raft in this.
Wow.
That's wild to me.
Wait,
Interesting.
really?
Yeah, issue 26, first appearance of the Raft in Marvel Comics.
What? That's crazy, dude. Mr. Funiverse says, "Oh, this came out in 2001. Wow, I did not exist.
Wait, what?
You and me both, brother.
Crazy. That makes me mental.
Stop. When were you born?
93.
Yeah,
I
you
was
were
gonna
really
say.
fucking with me there for a second. I'm like, you're a year younger than me. How does this add up?
Kyle said, considering how the poll started and how it ended, is anyone still disappointed Alias won over Avengers? For those of you who have read both, um, for the sake of reading and the conversation we just had, no, I'm not disappointed at all. The YouTuber in me, maybe that's a different story.
Yeah, the person that's that cares about numbers, yeah, different story. But in terms of what I wanted to read, this was it. I wanted to read this
Yeah.
because I never read this, and this is giving me the chance to, which is hard for me to go back and read old stuff when I'm reading so much new stuff.
Yeah. I
Aiden's
feel the
Hideout.
exact
Oh,
same.
go ahead.
I feel the exact same.
Aiden's Hideout says, "Do you think this book gave Marvel the push to do more boots on the ground books like The Pulse and Frontlines?" I mean, literally, yeah, right. The Pulse is a sequel to this. I think that post financial collapse, Marvel was desperate and they were willing to try stuff. And this is coming out of that trying stuff. I think a lot of the Daredevil stuff they were doing comes out of that. Marvel Max, Marvel Knights. Joe Quesada was working day and night to figure out ways to get people back in shops for Marvel Comics. And one of those ways was to use characters that were either new or that no one cared about and make them hot.
Yeah, I think this exists because Marvel Knights, and I think in a way, like this has a lot of Marvels in it as well.
Hmm.
Oh
Kurt
geez,
Busiek and
Kurt Busiek and why am I forgetting?
Alex Ross.
Alex Ross. Thank you, Cale. Jesus Christ. That story in it as well in terms of like that's boots on the ground, but that was 94, I believe. That was almost ahead of its time. But I think that leads to the Marvel Knights stuff, which then leads to this. There's a clear line between those.
I also wonder if this was sort of another angle on that world outside your window that Marvel hadn't quite explored. You know, I think early on, you know, up to this point, the idea was just like, no, it's superheroes out in your world. And, you know, oh, look up in the sky. There's Thor and the Fantastic Four. But this is, no, look down. There's superheroes down there, too.
There are superheroes down there and there are humans down there.
Yeah.
And so often when those worlds collide, it's the superhero aspect taking precedence. Whereas in this book, I think it's the human aspect. And that really makes it stand out. Because you just don't see enough of this. And I think that grounded nature will continue to be shown all throughout the 2000s. Look at Captain America by Brubaker and Epting. That's a very grounded book. Secret War, Secret War feels more like this than it feels like the OG Secret Wars
Or Avengers.
or Avengers. Yeah, totally. That's another one people should read.
That's rad, man.
The community just did a mini book club about it, I think last night.
What? On Secret War?
Yeah.
How come nobody told me?
It was a secret.
Oh my God.
You got to pay attention, dog.
Damn.
I have a question.
Yeah.
But it doesn't deal with Sean or Cale. Marco, does this make you want to read more Bendis? Marvel Bendis.
Yeah, yeah, and as you guys talk about it and the way that it's framed, it makes me want to be like, damn, how do I go back? Like I just had the thought, how do I have the experience of being shocked that somebody was a Skrull? Like where do I start with that? What is that? What is that journey?
The fact that you know that already means you won't get the exact
Yep.
experience.
But you know what I mean? Like what is that facsimile?
My perspective on that is if you took the journey the way it, like, you can never replicate it fully, but if you took the journey by reading every issue, when you get to that point, because you don't know when it's going to happen, and
Yep.
you probably don't even necessarily remember who it is,
Yep.
That's
you
why I
will
said that's why I said a Skrull appears.
you will have an experience that won't be mine, but it will be uniquely yours, and I think that is valuable.
And if you read it the way I read it, um, I'm a trade waiter, and I've always been a trade waiter. So I get to the end of the book, and it's yeah,
And
like I didn't get the relief of the next issue or whatever. I had to wait.
good thing, Marco, I put it in the chat here, is the Comic Book Herald Bendis Marvel reading order. It starts at Alias, so you just started it, Marco. Go right into Daredevil,
Fuck.
Pulse, Disassembled, Secret War, Avengers. You are on your way.
Oh, and I got the app too. Oh.
Which
There you
the
go,
other
baby.
stuff will be on it.
And I read already at Civil War, so I can skip all that. Damn.
Don't do that. Because Civil War presents questions that you're gonna have.
Yeah, like Civil War feels like an extension of what Marvel was doing.
Yeah.
When you read it in a vacuum, it doesn't necessarily hit that same way. Um, Last question, and then we will let you guys know what the next book club and month will be about. So Hayden's Hideout says, "Do you think current Marvel would give Alias a chance in the present day?" And he clarifies he means if Alias never existed and was pitched today, would Marvel publish this?
Not in this way. No, I think Marvel is too preoccupied with their characters as IP and what they can do outside of the comics to want to put that much of a hard edge on their characters.
I think if Tom King wrote it, they probably would give it a try.
It's a big if.
I mean,
Not
that's what this is what Mr. Miracle is. You're
Sean, you
muted,
muted.
Sean.
Yeah.
sorry. If you take out the hardest edges of this, I guess, then yeah, it's just Mr. Miracle or whatever. Would Marvel publish it today? No. Do I see a time in the future where they would? Yes, I do.
Well, they would do it today if she was a mutant.
Man, how hard I had to think about that.
All right. So Bendis month is coming to an end. This is our last Bendis month thing, pretty much. And so we've got to think about the future. What are our plans for next month? Next month, April, will be based around one of the architects of DC Comics, the man behind Ghost Machine, Jeff motherfucking Johns. It is going to be Jeff Johns month, and we are asking you guys to nominate your favorite Jeff Johns books from any publisher at any time. Doesn't matter, except Forever Evil, because we did that. We did no, we did. Did we do that?
Yes.
Is that
No, we
pre-me?
did
We did Dark Side War.
Dark Side
Yeah.
War.
We did Dark Side
Yeah.
War. Yep.
So except Dark Side War, you can nominate anything else. Your heart's content. We will be taking those nominations on Discord, on patreon.com/the comics pals for free. There will be a free thread where anybody can nominate a book. And of course, on YouTube, under the post tab, there will be a post where you can share your nomination. 1 week from that process, which will begin tonight, we will give you the final four. Those final four books can be voted on by all of our supporting patrons. And then the week after that, so 2 weeks from today, we will announce to you the winning book, giving you ample time to prepare for the book club, which is always the last Tuesday of the month.
Now, we've also done Blackest Night
Oh,
not
That's
that
true.
long ago.
Yep.
you're right.
I was there for that.
Forgot.
Yeah, I think I pitched
So
that one as
maybe
well.
so yeah, so Dark Side War and Blackest Night don't count.
Okay. Yeah.
His Marvel Vision run counts though.
His Avengers counts as well. Like that. That's good shit. I don't know how many people have read that stuff. That's good stuff.
Is there a want that you have here? And Cale, why is it New Teen Titans?
New Teen Titans fucking rules. That's why. Um, I would love to. You know what? Bendis and Johns were very similar. Not necessarily right around this time, but in this era, I feel like Bendis and Johns were neck and neck. You know, they were like the guys, the top tier creators. We take for granted where the companies are right now, but like Bendis and Johns were, as Sean said, the architects, and that is no joke. They were the blueprints of where the big two went up to, geez, what do you think, Sean? 2015?
Yeah.
From
I
like
would say
2000 to 2015.
yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I would love to see something uh early Johns, preferably early DC Johns that is like equitable to this somehow. Teen Titans may even be a little too new. I might even go early John's Flash if we could condense that somehow.
I'm a basic bitch. I want Sinestro Core War. Sorry.
Hey, it's good.
Gosh. I've been itching to reread Infinite Crisis, so I would love that. Um, outside of that, maybe something I haven't read. I haven't read Flash. I haven't read Teen Titans, so I would be into that.
Can we just say Brightest Day probably off the table too? 52 issues?
We're not getting there.
What even
Okay,
There's
is
no
that's
that?
way.
fine.
Yeah, I don't even.
We're not getting
All
there.
right, that's fine.
Search for
Um,
Brightest Day, the Search for Swamp Thing, 3-issue miniseries. Come on,
There,
that's
I don't
great.
think that was written by Jeff Johns. I'm afraid.
Ah, you're right. You're right. You're
that's the only reason why it's going to be disqualified. That small little detail
right.
there.
Ooh, JSA is good. I like JSA, but
That,
I don't know.
that I don't think it would win, but I think it would count as
It
far
would.
as yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, dude. The Golden Age, the JSA Golden Age thing that Jeff Johns has been doing the last few years, so cool. I have no context for that. I didn't like. I don't. I've never read his other JSA
Ooh,
stuff.
yeah. It's good. It's good. Hound calls out Stars and Stripe. That might be the one.
That's old. That's
Or
that's.
I think that would be the one that would be the Alias equivalent. I think that's what I'm looking for.
Whew. Yeah, yeah. All right. So Jeff Johns month. Make sure that you guys get your noms in. We'll be posting the threads in each of the locations that I mentioned earlier here in a little bit. So stay on the lookout for that. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. The next time we will be live with you is this Thursday for Pals Pulse, 6 p.m. Eastern, as always. And then Saturday at 10:15 a.m. for the main show. So we will see you guys there. Until then, take care.